D-Day. Britain and her allies strike back at Hitler's Reich, taking their first steps into Nazi-occupied Europe. Even while the first assault troops were landing on the beaches, Britain's Special Air Service Regiment was in action, deep behind enemy lines, sabotaging and disrupting vital German reinforcements.
Landed in France. The first night I was there, I took my section and blew up the railway between Montargis and Orléans. And then we did a few strafes on the road.
Spring 1944. A formidable group of Special Forces troops is inspected by General Montgomery, who would command the Allied assault forces on D-Day, and Brigadier R.W. McLeod, commander of the SAS Brigade. Paddy Mayne, one of the legendary original members, led one SAS regiment. 2 SAS was led by Bill Sterling, brother of the unit's founder, alongside the Free French SAS and a Free Belgian squadron. As D-Day approached, a battle was raging about the correct use of the SAS. At one stage, it was thought they should parachute in close to the beachhead as tactical front-line troops. This ignored the basic principles on which the SAS had been set up and already operated so successfully. Somehow, imprisoned deep in Germany following his capture in Tunisia, David Sterling heard of this and got involved.
I'd got a letter back to him from my prisoner of war camp to urge him to refuse absolutely to ever allow the 2nd SAS regiment to be used in semi-tactical roles. That he must keep to the effective function of the regiment.
Urged on by David, Bill Sterling argued strongly that the regiment continue in its strategic role.
We'd be dealing with major targets and operating at night right behind or right in the depth of France.
Bill won the argument, but at a cost. He had to step aside from the SAS. His place as commander of 2 SAS was taken by Brian Franks, who would now play a major role in the future of this elite unit. Even as the assault ships moved across the English Channel during the night of the 5th, 6th of June, the SAS was going into action. One of its first tasks was deception. The Germans knew that an invasion was imminent, but they couldn't decide where, and the SAS was involved in the plan to keep them guessing. First in were small units, dropped over the Normandy coast close behind enemy lines, but away from the main landing areas. They were to create diversions by suggesting that a major parachute landing was underway. To help them in this, dozens of small dummy paratroops equipped with firecrackers and flares were also dropped. Ironically, the original SAS had been partly founded to give substance to a deception that the British had a major airborne unit in the Middle East. But as the troops, real and dummy, floated down, it all went badly wrong. Their equipment was widely scattered. In the darkness, they couldn't find it. They became disorientated. The troopers had no choice but to abort the mission and go into hiding. In the next few hours, British, American, and Canadian forces stormed ashore and began fighting their way off the beaches. as German reinforcements raced forward, the SAS launched a series of behind-the-lines operations to disrupt them. Among these was Operation Bullbasket. In the early hours of the 6th of June, Captain John Tonkin and over 50 SAS were dropped by parachute 150 miles south of the Normandy beaches. They came down near Châteauroux. Then, linking up with local resistance fighters, they set off across country towards a key railway junction near Châtellerault, just north of Poitiers. There they found 11 tankers of fuel destined for an SS Panzer regiment headed towards the Normandy beaches. The dump was too well defended for a direct attack, so the SAS men called in RAF Mosquito fighter bombers. These made a precision attack, swooping in at treetop level and destroying the target with its vital supplies. It was one of many blows which helped blunt the German counterattacks during the key phase of the battle to establish the Allied beachhead. The Bullbasket team mounted several more highly successful operations, but were then tragically betrayed by French collaborators and captured. One wounded SAS man was publicly beaten to death in a village square. 30 more were marched into the woods and shot. Despite this disaster, SAS operations continued. Their effectiveness was increased when battle jeeps were parachuted in. These could be ready for action within 20 minutes of landing. Heavily armed with Vickers machine guns and loaded with fuel, stores and ammunition, the jeeps gave the SAS much-needed mobility and a far greater potential to mount devastating raids. In Operation Gain, one SAS unit was dropped near Paris with jeeps to cut railway lines to Normandy. Jim Allmans, who twice won the military medal, was on the operation.
And we had a sort of beat between Orléans, Montargis, and the apex of the triangle at Fontainebleau. That was our sort of patrolling distance.
On one mission, SAS original Gentleman Jim and his comrades got an unpleasant surprise.
Well, we went out to Montargis to survey a factory we intended to blow up. And we were hiding in a wood which backed up to the factory. It was an ideal place to survey the place from. And we'd camouflaged the jeeps up in this wood, and everything was going fine until we suddenly became aware there was troops moving in the wood. And we had to get out quick. So we started up and we set off on the track to come out of the wood. And we passed, as we were leaving the wood, trestle tables were set up and there were some of the general staff there. They were planning something. They waved to us to stop. And we sort of waved back and said, no, sorry, we can't. And we went on out onto the main road and we noticed that some troops piled into one of these staff cars and they started to follow us. They were obviously interested in us, but they didn't know what to make of us. We carried on and we suddenly realized we were approaching the town itself. And we had no possible way of retreat because this car was coming up behind. So we entered the town and we weaved through the marketplace and down the main street with all the German troops wandering around and the tanks and armoured cars and everything. We just weaved in and out amongst them until we came to the other end of the town, the other side of the town, where another knife rest was removed, and we again got a salute and we carried on back to base.
They had got away with it this time. but life behind the lines was constantly on the edge. For 3 years before D-Day, the British had worked to help build up the French resistance. Now, as the Normandy landings took hold, this secret army joined forces with the SAS. A key link between them was the liaison teams codenamed Jedburghs. These three-man communications units had been inserted into France just before D-Day to coordinate resistance activity. Mainly British, American and Free French officers, they provided the means by which the resistance could be used to maximum effect, sending back information, calling in supplies of arms, and coordinating raids on German reinforcements moving up towards the battlefield. As the SAS teams fanned out deep behind the lines, this role became even more crucial. One typical mission was Operation Houndsworth, in which men of one SAS were dropped near Dijon from the 6th of June onwards. Their task? To cut vital German lines of communication in central France between Lyon and Paris. The first essential was to set up a fully functioning base in the heavily wooded countryside. Intelligence gathering was a key aspect of this operation. As Johnny Cooper, at 22, an SAS veteran with 3 years' service, remembers.
We were not there so much as to disrupt, but to give information. If we could tell the higher commands whether the German army or their air force was being reinforced, withdrawn, or just maintained in any one area, after D-Day, gave them a terrific fill-up. So, for instance, we were watching the railway line just south of Dijon, and we also had on tap 3 squadrons of, one of Lightnings and 2 of Mustangs, and we would see a train going along, shall we say, going out west and going north. And we'd say 300 tanks, a troop train, so-and-so and so-and-so. We transmitted this from Area D, and the aircraft would pick them up in Area A. You see what I mean? That sort of thing, the intelligence work, I think was far more value to our side than the ambushing of the roads and the destruction of certain parts, because we had to be very careful of the civilian population, the reprisals, such as we had at Monsoche and those places.
Over the next 3 months, the SAS soldiers on Houndsworth built up their base until the force numbered over 140, equipped with machine guns and explosives. The SAS now launched a major campaign in the area, causing mayhem for the German defenders. Shooting up vehicles, disrupting supply routes, and then disappearing back into the forest. German reprisals were severe, and many French civilians were taken as hostages, shot, or sent to concentration camps. On at least one occasion, Johnny Cooper and his SAS team were able to intercept a convoy carrying French hostages. Working alongside the local resistance groups, the Maquis, they set up their ambush. Explosives had been placed to stop the first vehicle. With the convoy halted, the SAS fired on the escorting troops. The firefight eventually proved too much for the Germans, and the civilian hostages were released. The jeeps could not only take the SAS into action, but get them out of trouble. Frequently, they found themselves surrounded and outnumbered. But not all the SAS men carried guns. Fraser McCluskey parachuted in with one SAS and became a legend.
Well, I certainly couldn't have done my job, in my feeling, if I hadn't been where the men were. And I was very fortunate in that in the type of work they were doing, it was possible for a padre to be there without being a nuisance to them.
When he was under fire, he had quickly got to know the men, and he knew the men. Well, the men, they were good men, but at the same time, everybody is under tension. And he'd know the ones that were a little bit on the nervy side, and he would crawl away to them and, you know, pass such remarks. It's all right, don't worry, it's just let me caution, check it out. And he'd stop and have a little chat with them and see they'd nicely cooled down, calm, and off he'd go to the next man he thought might be a little bit on the nervy side.
When the situation demanded, however, the padre was ready to play a more active role.
He even came out and he was my driver on one or two things. Only thing he didn't realise that guns made such a big noise as they did. And but he was with me on 2 or 3 occasions when I'd done some ambushing.
But McCluskey was well aware of the moral dilemma in which this might put him.
Well, padres, by the Geneva Convention, are unarmed, and I never carried arms. And I think the men were glad to see the padre as a kind of symbol of the will of God for peace for all men.
We was all unanimous that we would look after the padre. And, but at any rate, he came and he asked my opinion, I told him. So he said, but how would you feel, he said, if I was on your vehicle? He said, and the mere fact that I could use a weapon to get you to safety. He said, something happened, you've been wounded or something like that. He said, and there's only me that could do it. He said, by me firing a shot, am I justified in saving your crew? I said, I think so, Padre. I'll go along with that. He said, well, teach me the weapons.
Shortly after this, Seekings was indeed wounded in an ambush.
This is where the Padre, I maintain, saved my life, because by this time I'd seized up. If I wanted to look behind me, the whole body had to turn around. See? And also feeling lousy, but the Padre carried my kit as well.
After 3 months, Operation Houndsworth had achieved an impressive record. "22 French railway lines destroyed. Over 200 Germans killed or wounded, 132 taken prisoner, 30 strategically important targets reported to the RAF and destroyed by Allied bombing and strafing. The main railway line from Paris to Dijon was severely disrupted. But it didn't all go smoothly. The SAS encountered problems between rival groups of French resistance fighters.
You've got to realise that there were different types of Mackeys. You had the military Mackey who escaped prisoners of war wanting to fight. You had the political Mackeys who would not operate in their own area because they wanted to become the political commissar or the local governor or mayor in that area, but they're going to somebody else's. You then had the people who were just escaping, working on the Todd's organisation, building the West Wall. And I was with the 3 different types. The military Mackeys were the best Mackeys. The political ones were quite capable of stopping you doing any act of sabotage in their area because the reprisals in their area would affect their political significance after the war.
One of the most daring SAS missions undertaken in occupied France was Operation Gaff. Its aim was to kill or capture Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commander of the German defences in Normandy. In command was Jack William Lee, a 24-year-old Franco-American veteran who had already served with the Special Operations Executive and then with French SAS. His motley team included an Englishman, 3 ex-legionnaires, a German-born sergeant, a Russian, and 2 Frenchmen. Several were Jewish and used false names. On the night of the 25th of July, they dropped into northern France. The canister containing their sniper rifles went missing, but the team pressed onwards towards Rommel's headquarters at La Roche-Guyon on the Seine. As they closed in on the target, news came through that aborted their mission. Rommel had just been hit, seriously wounded, in an RAF attack on his staff car in Normandy. Rather than simply returning to Britain, the SAS team switched to guerrilla assaults on German forces in the Seine Valley, derailing 2 trains, shooting up road convoys, and attacking a German headquarters in a villa near Rommel's former HQ. The French SAS were also active. 400 men under the one-armed Commandant Bourgoin tied up large numbers of German troops in the Forêt de Duau in Brittany. The Germans eventually resorted to flamethrowers to burn down the forest around them. So the SAS exfiltrated to link up with nearby Jedburgh agents and the resistance and plan further operations. These continued despite brutal reprisals against the local French population until the area was liberated by the advance of the US Third Army at the end of July. Despite fierce resistance by the Germans, the Allied forces now broke out and swept forward to the Seine. On the 26th of August, Paris was liberated, and a few days later, General Charles de Gaulle, leader of the Free French, joined other Allied leaders for a victory parade down the Champs-Élysées. Despite the euphoria, much heavy fighting remained ahead. Fighting in which the SAS would continue to play the same vital strategic role as it had during the Normandy landings and breakout, and conduct some of its most secret and remarkable operations of World War II.